next week I will go into the archives. I've pulled them. We haven't needed them in 5. They've been like the least popular thing I've worked with since the short sale genius days. But I'll pull the wells out of my hard drive and mine out of the hard drive and show them to you guys next week because it is coming up. The second is a big deal. I agree with David. I think the play on second, and you're talking 3 million properties. I would love to believe that they're all coming back on the market, and that would be our saving grace on supply and demand issues. But these morons are going to try to hold on to their houses till the last minute. They'll get a large percentage will get taken over by the banks, and those will wind up in equity firms' hands again as rentals. I just see that happening. That's what's been happening. The reason we don't have any inventory, am I crazy, David? Like, I feel like I'm the only one preaching this. The reason we have inventory issues is because the inventory was all turned into rentals by equity firms. But nobody seems to want to say that, and I feel crazy for saying it.
And that's going to continue to happen as long as rents are rising faster than housing values, which is maybe double from a percentage of income. Housing rentals are still appreciating much faster than housing prices.
Yeah. Richard Galloway, is there a way to track sales of homes by Wall Street hedge funds, not so-called small fry funds, but the real deep pocket funds? I'm sure there is, and probably your best data source is to go fish around on Twitter and follow those equity firms and see what tips they give. I'm sure that they have a data source that they all use. I'm sure it exists. I have learned more on Twitter. I have gotten really deeply involved on Twitter again over the last couple of weeks on purpose and using it as a news feed from the companies that I'm interested in and not necessarily. Here's the thing about news, and I'm in the business of conveying news to you guys as a coach and to the real estate world based on the traffic on my website. I can create a narrative and I can create news stories to fit that narrative. Makes David crazy, makes Diana crazy, makes Daren at RealtyTrac crazy, because I can use data to tell whatever story I want to fit to that story. Now, the reality of that situation and a hard fact like, well, we don't have inventory because that inventory is now rentals. That inventory was never on the market. And then they just do this magical thing called adjustment over at NAR, which is like an eraser line saying, well, that never existed and wouldn't be counted. All of that. Those are narratives created, okay? So the best way to get around a narrative created is to go on Facebook or go on Twitter and start following companies like KB Homes and find out about their home starts and find out about their earnings reports. I just read an article that Freddie and Fannie are going to need additional bailout money. That's crazy to me, and the news isn't picking up on this. That's a huge deal.
How could they need money? They just
released a report. This is like within the last 22 hours, and I don't even know how to present it because it's too technical for everybody. But the report came out. Hold on, I can bring up the report.
They've been giving money back to the Treasury. They didn't keep a reserve.
They didn't keep a reserve, and they're going to need more bailout money to keep the companies afloat.
The same reserve. That same reserve they make banks keep.
Yeah, right. They don't have one of those, so their reserve is drying out. So they released a report just within the last day called the Dodd-Frank Act Stress Test. Severely Adverse Scenario by FHFA. I cannot even kid you on this, David. I got the PDF.
So those rules don't apply to them, though.
Right, of course not.
That's the problem. So that's why.
The projection, this all started with an article that I read on DS News, and the projection is, they're probably going to need more money to keep Freddie and Fannie going. I'm like, wow, okay. That's big time stuff, and it's really technical mumbo jumbo behind the scenes, but it affects everything. It just does. All of these stupid little things affect how much money's lent. You name it. There are cause and effects to all of this in the market. Does it matter to you guys? No. Go look up notice of sales, notice of defaults, probates, defaults, divorce, expireds, whatever. I'm just telling you there are greater forces at work in this market, and my greater concern is I really want to know what the perception of realtors is in this market. I'm going out on the road in September for a week on a pre-foreclosure listing jaunt around California and Arizona. I might do the East Coast for a week, but I'm telling you, people like the word pre-foreclosure a lot right now. It's pretty crazy. Brendan, got that. Seeing a jump in renovations. His GCs are all overbooked. Richard Galloway. Why is David moving in 2 or 3 years? You sure this isn't Diana writing as Richard Galloway? I can give you my projected theory as well as Diana's projected theory, but David's probably just moving up. David is projecting to move in the next 2 to 3 years, Diana. Why do you suppose that is? What Richard Galloway wants to know. David, I'm not going to even let David answer the question. David just did $70,000 of renovation because he's planning to move in the next 2 to 3 years, plus or minus. And Richard Galloway wrote, why do you suppose David is doing, wants to know why David's doing that. What is your speculation, Ms. Ortiz? Because he's getting married. That would be a very good speculatory. David won't go for anything that politically incorrect because he's probably not bought a ring, but if knowing David and how long he's been with his girlfriend.
Well, I can only tell you that there is a girl.
There is a girl. Yeah, go, David. I got to turn this into a podcast and give it to her. You just convinced me to turn this particular episode into a podcast and make sure she gets a copy, David.
And she, and well,
have there been talks about talks? Have there been talks about talks?
There's talks about talks, but
there's talks about talks.
But more importantly, I know we're way off subject here. I don't need to live. I live alone in a 5-bedroom house. I've just turned it into a 5-bedroom man cave. That's all.
What's wrong with a 5-bedroom man cave? I would love a 5-bedroom man cave. Richard, if you factor out government intervention, home ownership has always been and have versus the have-nots position. Now, that's the story of the middle class, Richard. The middle class is always about getting screwed, and whose side do we take? I guess. But I agree with that. Above 400,000 values are dropping in Orlando. I'm planning on coming out there, Brendan. There's a lot of foreclosure and weird activity happening in Florida and New Jersey that requires additional investigation.
I'm going to be there in November.
Let's do a tour when you go out. Yep. Good plan. I already know about all the Inland Empire. Okay. Victoria Conway, I guess I have to check the MLS before I tag because I put out a letter tag and I immediately received a phone call from the owner who wanted me to help save his home. So I got excited, as you should. But he told me he was in a short sale, and when I went to the MLS and saw it was in contingent, no sign.
That means it's negotiation, yeah.
Right. No sign was on the property when I left the letter/tag, and it indicated it was not listed on property radar either. Yeah, that'll happen. Pocket listing. How are pocket listings going on out in the Conejo Valley? I believe they're happening a lot more with the fact that the mom and pop investors are out and looking.
Yeah. Well, this is not a pocket listing. It just doesn't have a sign.
Well, yeah.
She said it was contingent in the MLS, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it wasn't a pocket. We don't see that many. In short sales, you can't really get away with it because the bank, one of the first things the bank asks for is an MLS sheet verifying it's been listed.
Don't you want to submit this? Okay.
But we do see them. We see them out here, but mostly pocket listings are people who don't want to pay a buyer agent commission.
Yeah. Don, you wrote the same half a sentence twice. Okay, wait, now it's all there. Will the bank stop the short sale if they started working with you on the short sale? Just for starting to work on the short sale, they might, but how much do you really need in to stop it, David?
Well, more and more, there are two barriers where the banks are doing now. Number one is many of the banks are putting a time deadline of as much as 37 days to have a complete package submitted prior to the foreclosure date. Some of them are 14 days, some of them are 30 days, some are 28 days. I couldn't tell you which ones are which because I don't do that on a day-to-day basis. And then the other thing is the other barrier, many of the banks require actual approval to postpone the sale. So there are lots of things that we do in order to buy more time. And if you get yourself in a situation and you need help, you call us, and that would be something we could assist you with.
Donald writes, are you an accountant? Okay, Donald, because clearly you don't know this. How many of you, by a raise of hands, do not know my actual background prior to 2010? Legit. All I need is one. Okay, Don doesn't. All right, quickly. I'm the former head loss mitigator for IndyMac Bank's HELOC. No, not MMA fighter. That is very funny, Jeff. You guys got to stop Googling me. Exotic dancer? Who's that guy fighting Danny Bonaducci? Yeah, they're all me, okay? I have a very extraordinary life of some crazy events. But in 1988, I was an asset manager. That's my first job that I ever had. I worked for Beneficial, Donald. Second job was for GMAC Homecomings prior to the merger. So I'm an idiot for not buying stock. I could have been rich if I knew what would have happened. And they told me what was going to happen, and I didn't do anything about it. I worked for IndyMac in the home construction lending division and as an asset manager, so I know how to build out, repair. I've had my own development company as well. But then I was the head loss mitigator for the HELOC division. I wrote protocols that David hates. Like, I'm legendary in my – there are people that are coaching students that have memories of mitigating short sale files against me when I was a lunatic. Like, they're legend. Like, I'm legendary for how insane I was. I am everything everybody hates about short sales. And I did it in a HELOC position. And I maintained a record-breaking, this is why I can always write my ticket. I'll do it today. I maintained, back when there was no equity, I was maintaining 20% return on my portfolio. And that's why they didn't want me to quit and go speak for Short Sale Genius. That's a lot of money when there's zero equity. Thank you. I'll be here all week. David doesn't want to comment. Never does. I was an asshole. I admit what I was. So there's your answer, Donald. So I still have all my bank stuff. How is the Fed going to unwind their huge mortgage-backed securities position without killing the economy, especially the mortgage market? Good question, Richard. Probably create a derivative under the Clinton program, and that derivative will be a swap, and that swap, Richard, you just read their book, right? So those swaps will be sold to wacky Germans. There's somebody out there, like Israel, I would say, not Israel, but the Middle Eastern countries, like money oil, like people who have money will put it somewhere, okay? Don't think China won't get involved. Don't think that the Middle East won't buy notes and back. Like, money has to come from somewhere, and it has to be bought. How do you see it unwinding, David?
There's always going to be people out there buying them.
Yes.
So, and it's a lot safer to buy them now. Listen, Wall Street has a, they're slow learners and fast forgetters. So, and greed is, just clouds people's judgments. There's always going to be somebody that buys them, especially in this regulatory environment and the precedents that have been set by the court for them to sell bad notes. So it's probably easier. It's probably easier for people to buy them in a much better investment than it was 8 years ago, for sure. It's like credit card companies who issue credit cards to people who just had their bankruptcy discharged.
Yeah.
Because it's a safer bet because you can't file for bankruptcy again for 7 years.
And I will say this for everybody wondering I'm not here to have a political discussion. I think both of our candidates are horrible, and I'm appalled with our country. But under the Clinton administration, which is clearly what we're going to have, unless she's arrested, she's going to lower the guidelines on lending. Like, don't kid yourself. That's going to happen. And with FHA now, with the whole Freddie Fannie FHA thing being completely, literally government-controlled organizations, they'll be insuring their own loans. So when we crash this time, we'll bankrupt the country, probably. I mean, that's my speculation. Like, I try not